Coming this time on Art Rocks, a Louisiana songbird who's taking jazz and the blues to the world's stages. These stories up next on Art Rocks.
West Baton Rouge Museum is proud to provide local support for this program on LPB, offering diverse exhibitions throughout the year and programs that showcase art, history, music, and more. West Baton Rouge Museum, culture cultivated.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.
Hello, thank you for joining us for Art Rocks with me, James Fox-Smith from Country Roads magazine. Vocal stylist CoCo York has made a name for herself from New Orleans to North Louisiana. Nowadays, though, York is developing a passionate base of support in other parts of the world too. Fans say not only does CoCo appear to deeply feel what she's singing, they feel it too. LPB producer Dorothy Kendrick had a chance to speak with CoCo during a recent visit to the Biedenharn Museum Gardens in Monroe, Louisiana. Let's listen in.
I understand you started performing music at a very young age.
I started playing piano when I was about 4, taking lessons.
You went on to play for your church.
I did. And I played for my church until I finished high school, actually. Then I went away to college. On a dare, I was originally going to audition in piano, and somebody dared me to also audition in voice. And so I did, and they accepted me.
Those falling leaves drift by my window. Those leaves of red and gold. Baby, I feel you.
I figured that they would accept me in piano because I had been playing for a while, but I hadn't been singing. Or during the time that I was playing for church, I wasn't really singing. I was just playing for them. Of course, teaching them how to sing a song or that kind of thing, or teaching parts. I guess I had the talent. I didn't know that I had the talent because I had been doing other things. But then as time rocked on, my talent developed, and I decided that I wanted to be an opera singer. Our director had invited an opera singer to come and do a concert there. And she happened to have been Maynard Jackson's aunt, but she had been living in Europe for years and years and years. She was this little petite lady, very beautiful, just very tiny. She had this voice that was just so mesmerizing. She was a coloratura, which means that she could go extremely high, a little bit like Mariah Carey. She had those high notes. It was like, I had never heard anything like that, ever.
Mit Lust tät ich ausreiten durch einen grünen Wald. Darin, da hört ich singen, 3 Vögel ohne Gestalt. Und sind es nicht 3 Vögelein, so sind's 3 Fräulein fein.
I went to my director, who happened to have been my voice teacher, and I asked him what would be the possibility of me studying with her. And he said, well, I don't know. So he said, let me check into it. He did, he said. He came back with the report that she said it was okay to work with you. And he said, she's a friend of mine. I will set that up for you.
She was living in Baton Rouge.
She was living in Europe. She was going to be artist in residence at the University of Texas for that year. When I got there, I realized that I should have registered before in order to get in school to study with her. But I didn't register, thinking, okay, my mind was on me studying with her, not the whole school thing. She told me, she said, well, look, because you're not registered in school, only thing I can do is I can give you private lessons, but I have to audition you. I can only promise nothing. She said, if you're good enough, I'll take you as a student. If you're not, then I won't take you. And she accepted me. And we set a price for the lessons and so forth. And I ended up not having paid for not one lesson, simply because I had a car, she didn't. And every time she needed something on my days of my lessons, I would say, let me drive you home. If you need anything, you need me to go to the grocery store for you, you need me to take your clothes to the laundry, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And she would give like little house parties and stuff. I said, why don't you let me come and I'll serve drinks and I'll clean up the kitchen and I'll clean up da-da-da-da-da. So by me doing all of these things, she never charged me. That was my journey with Maddie Wilder. And when she left Austin and she went to teach at Spelman, I left and I also went to Atlanta, continued studying with her. And then I married a jazz musician. And everything went left turn, and my talent was developing. The president of Houston Tillotson College at that time came to one of the students' recitals. He asked me, would I like to travel with him to sing before his speeches? He was one of the first black generals. And I said, well, sure, of course. So I got a chance to get some exposure singing. I got a chance to really sort of be heard and more development with stage presence and that kind of thing. As I said, I met and married a jazz musician. And his father was Tiny York, who gave Ray Charles one of his first gigs. So he was also from a musical family. He worked at the Fairmont Hotel in New Orleans under Dick DeVille. He was over the orchestra. I would go to their gigs and listen to them. And that hotel brought in people like Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra, Sarah Vaughan. So I got a chance to listen to the best of the best of the best. I had to unlearn so many things in order to be able to make a good sound. Music is sound. So in order to just make a good sound, with everything not being, but making, even if it is that, make it sound like something, put some feeling in it, stretch out some of those tones where they glide rather than just have that frequency and that waveform happening, right? Listening to them interpret songs and interpret their feeling and their emotions mixed with this music was so completely different than opera, of course, because here you had a chance to place yourself in the lyric of the song and from your experience and interpret it from your experience. In opera, it's a little different because everything is scored out. With jazz, blues, pop, you are the story. Everything around you is the story.
Unchain my heart, baby, let me go. Unchain my heart, baby, you don't love me no more. Every time I call you on the phone, somebody's telling me that you're not at home. Unchain my heart, set me free.
My first gigs, I had been learning songs with him.
Your husband?
Uh-huh. And I had walked in on Bourbon Street at the Absinthe Bar, going around listening to different singers and so forth. And I became very bold, and I asked one of the musicians, I said, can I sit in? He said, sure. And I said, okay. He said, well, what do you want to sing? I said, blues. I did Stormy Monday and a few other blues. And I ended up with the gig that night. They fired her and hired me. And I was like, ooh, that's not a good way to get a gig. But I felt great that I had a chance to perform. That was the whole objective.
The instrumentation, was this your husband or someone else?
This is a whole different band with Larry Siebert, who's very popular in New Orleans, Ricky Sebastian, who teaches at one of the music schools there. They're all such fierce musicians. Johnny Vodakovich, all these guys, the big top-notch guys who we all in our 20s during that time.
How long did you stay at this particular club, and then you move on, and then you get to the point where you're going overseas and stuff? How did that work out?
That happened in that club with that band around the same time. I've been working with them, I guess, probably maybe like 6 months or so. I'm gonna find what I'm after.
with you. I can learn to with you on another day. But who can I turn to? Who can I turn to? You turn
Convention people came into the club, and a lady walked up to me and she said, Australian lady, and she said, could I talk to you? And so many people walk up to you. So many people want to talk to you. So many people are always having something to say, want to spend some time, or want you to spend some time with them. So I was like, oh, yeah. Okay, sure. Then, but I said, you have to wait until after the gig is over. By saying that, I'm thinking, okay, well, she's going to be long gone. Nobody's going to wait. Because we were doing 6 sets, and our sets were like an hour. And then we'd take these half an hour breaks, you know. So I was like, she's going to be long gone. But she waited. She said, okay, I really do want to talk to you. And she said, you should come to Australia. I'm very flippant. And I'm like, well, you set it up and I'll come. How many people are going to come up to you, a completely stranger, and remap your entire life, okay? And she was only there for a couple of days. And the next day, because I had a car, I went and got her, picked her up from the hotel. And I said, well, look, let me just take you around and show you New Orleans, So we had a chance to spend the day together and so forth. Of course, during that time, there was no email and digital anything. And so we wrote letters back and forth, and at this point, I had a baby. So it was like, I have to try to make this work here and so forth. But she, little bit by little bit, she gave me these Australian stories and so forth. And it was like, well, that's an idea. It became a real good idea. And all of a sudden, the babysitter's father was there with me. And we were just chatting and so forth. And phone rang. I picked up the phone. And she said, hi, this is Sandy. She said, are you serious? Would you really consider coming to Australia? I'm being flippant, of course. And I'm going, yeah, I'll come. I'm thinking none of this is going to happen. I'll just roll with it. And a few minutes later, she called back and she said, well, if you were to come, how long would it take you in order to get ready? And I said, about a month. And I waited a few minutes later. And she called back and she said, well, there'll be a ticket for you waiting for you at New Orleans Airport.
What was going on with your husband?
My husband and I were separated, yeah.
This gave you freedom.
Yeah. And it gave me freedom, but it also blew my mind. This door being opened for me, and I didn't do anything to open it per se. Plus, I have a kid to think about. And he was like 2 years old or something. So that's huge. I talked to my mom about it, and she said, she would help me with the baby. And so we devised a plan that I would go. I flew over to Australia, and she could have been anybody. She was so nice. This whole world was 180. Everything is on the left side. You drive on the right side of the car, on the left side of the road. I loved it. We had a chance to do a lot of gigs. I worked in the RSL clubs with some of the best musicians there. Nobody can do the blues there like me, because I was one of the only African Americans that worked in the country who could do the blues like me.
What was the money like compared to what you're making here?
Well, here in New Orleans at that time, people were making $50. Each musician was getting paid about $50. And there I was getting paid $300 to $500.
And the cost of living there compared to here?
I was rooming with Sandy, so we were splitting the rent. So the cost of living at that time was probably, don't forget, we're talking about the South. The South at that time, and probably now, generally a lot cheaper to live than other places.
You stay in Sydney for a while, but you spent a lot of time in Holland, which is a big jump. How did that come about?
Somebody just came up to me, and it had to be the question. They saw me and heard me working at one of the nicest clubs in Sydney, a place called Rogues. I and a pianist were working there. And somebody walked up to me and said, hey, we'd like to hire you on a project. And I'm thinking, Sydney, okay, fine. They said, well, it's going to be in Holland. And I'm thinking, well, okay, sure, I'll come. I checked with the club on to make sure that I could come back to the Leader of Apples to allow me to score. I had been working there a year. I've been bringing in good crowds. They flew me over to Holland, and I liked it. I brought my son with me. There I made them, and I didn't have to have a band.
How long did you stay in Holland?
Almost 30 years.
Were you playing for a number of clubs, or were you at the same club?
I was there for about 5 years, I guess, before I was hired at the conservatory in Rotterdam. And I was also working for the two largest event companies. Once I started working at the conservatory, I was teaching during the day and then gigging at night. Not every night, weekends, that kind of thing.
I have heard that Americans kind of go from one genre to another. In Europe, some of these old styles of music are much more popular. Give me a little bit of Tennessee whiskey and what people loved about it, and I'd like to hear that.
You know, this is one of my favorites. So many favorites. I used to spend my nights out in a barroom. Liquor was the only life I'd known. But you rescued me from reaching for the bottom and brought me back from being far too young. You're as smooth as Tennessee whiskey. You're as sweet as strawberry wine. You're as warm as a glass of brandy. And honey, I stay stoned on your love all the time.
Now, what drew you back home?
Well, my mom got sick. And she was in and out of the hospital for a while. Then I felt that if I were going to ever spend some quality time with her, not just on vacations, I needed to be with her. So, and that was why I moved. But again, I didn't quit. I took a leave of absence. Soon as she got better, then I could go back and, But then I realized also during that time that quality was better. No, I moved here. I'm here. But in the middle of all of this moving and being here, I've also worked a lot in Asia for like 6 months out of the year, and I come back 6 months, and I go someplace else 6 months out of the year, come back. And so yeah, I'm always on the go.
Florida-based photographer Scott Audette has made a name for himself in many arenas. His latest is in shooting portraits underwater. Painstaking thought and planning go into every Audette photo session, creating end results that shimmer with vibrancy and inner life. So focus in on this.
Hey, I'm Scott Audette, and I'm an underwater portrait photographer here in Lakeland, Florida. Photography is what I've done my entire life. I was probably in 7th or 8th grade when I picked up a camera, And I had a teacher in middle school who had a darkroom and showed me how to process and print my first black and white pictures. And once the bug hit, it stuck with me my entire life. So I've worked in primarily pro sports, but also in the news business. So I've worked for the Reuters News Service, the Associated Press News Service, still do some more for the Tampa Bay Rays. I was with the Tampa Bay Lightning for 21 years, and I've kind of covered and seen it all. I've been to Super Bowl, I've been to the World Series, I've been to the Olympics. You name it, I've probably have been there. The underwater photography is an evolution of a relationship between me and my father. He was a firefighter, but he fancied himself as a photographer with underwater stuff. And so really I picked up a camera, the first underwater, just so that he and I had something in common to do. And then realized not too long into it that I really wanted to do more with it and explore further in the field and in the genre. Underwater photography gives me the opportunity to create something that's not necessarily part of my everyday life as a sports photographer. This allows me to go back to when I was a 13, 14-year-old kid and first picked up a camera, right? That's where the excitement is. That's where the magic is and the passion is, creating something that you're thinking about in your head and then taking it and putting it then on a piece of film. Now we're putting it in a digital file. So that's what drives me to do this.
It's not as easy as it looks because you've got a combination of artistic skill and technical skill that he's combining to create finished images that give him the product that he wants to have.
I do the sets, I bring all the clothes, I pick out all the fabrics, like the makeup that Coral is wearing today. I picked out the makeup that I wanted her to wear. I helped her design the headpiece. Like, that's part of the creative process. It's not just what happens in the water. 95% of what I do happens on land before we ever touch the water. My pool in the backyard is the ideal location for this. We keep it 90 degrees year round. What we do underwater isn't like shooting a portrait above water. Like, a lot of stuff has to be adapted and even sometimes created. So we're using Canon series DSLRs still. The downside to underwater photography is kind of the cost of entry. The housings that you put these cameras in typically cost a lot more than the cameras do. And then we do something unique, which is where we're using strobes above water and in the water. And then we connect them with fiber optics and radio slaves and specially made cables and boxes we've created. And so it's a little bit of a process, but it just kind of comes together now.
Wow. Being photographed underwater is very calming. It's very relaxing. You slip under the water and everything just goes away. It's like meditation.
Once you kind of get into it and you figure it out, it becomes pretty natural pretty quickly. I mean, we were born in a sack of water.
Deep breaths, you know, like you could work on breath work if you want to, especially in the professional space. You know, a lot of us are free dive certified and things like that. But for just like your first time, just relax and trust yourself. It's fun.
We're in an Instagram-driven world, right? In a TikTok-driven world. And this really lends itself to that. So we tend to see a lot of younger women, but as my business has changed into where I'm working to try to create more gallery-oriented stuff, I work with a lot of gay men and gay women. And their openness tends to make this a lot easier in the water because they're trying to express themselves and this water is just another medium. So Born This Way is a really fun project that I started a year ago. I had a 15-foot umbilical cord made that goes to a prosthetic belly button that goes on the person. And the idea is basically that we're exploring how that I feel like everybody's predestined to be who they are in life. And so, especially in the LGBTQ plus community, I'm wanting to embrace part of that too and, you know, give them the opportunity to say, okay, this is who I am.
So Polk County, because we're wedged between Orlando and Tampa, right, we don't necessarily get people thinking of us as an arts and cultural destination. Scott's a perfect example of the type of creative artists and creative industries we have here in Polk County that maybe people in some of the larger urban areas around us that aren't aware of. But his work's very creative. He's thinking innovatively, outside the box, so to speak, or maybe inside the pool. And the fact that he's here in Polk County lends credence to what we're trying to do at the Polk Arts and Cultural Alliance, which is make Polk County a destination for arts and culture.
I like to say that a photograph isn't a photograph until you print it.
As a photographer myself, I know the power of the printed image, and to see his work blown up, he had an exhibit and there were some, 10 by 20 banner-sized pieces. It were just amazing to see that.
All the pre-planning that went into it, from the makeup, the clothing, the backdrop, the lighting, the finding the right model, that's the culmination. That, for me, is when I say, okay, this is something I'm proud of.
Yeah, look at the reflection. It's awesome. I'll put it on my birthday wall.
All right, that's that for another edition of Art Rocks. As always, each episode showcases original work by a Louisiana artist, and you'll find every one of them archived online at lpb.org/artrocks. And if you appreciate discovering stories like these, consider subscribing to Country Roads magazine. It's a vital guide for getting to grips with Louisiana's vibrant cultural life all across the state. Until next week, I've been James Fox Smith, and thank you for watching.
West Baton Rouge Museum is proud to provide local support for this program on LPB, offering diverse exhibitions throughout the year and programs that showcase art, history, music, and more. West Baton Rouge Museum, culture cultivated.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.